I've recently started a series on my channel where I break down every fight to make next when the UFC gets back in action, hopefully when this pandemic's all over. I've covered the lightweights, I've covered the featherweights. Do you see what direction I'm going in? We're covering the welterweight division. That's right, there's no direction in the order in which I'm taking on these divisions. I'm going with the welterweights. They have great fights all across the board, up and down the fucking rankings. We're going to go through every single ranking spot, given the fights I want to see made next in the UFC's welterweight division, starting with the championship fight, of course, but we're also going to include some unranked fighters as well, because there's plenty of fun ones in the welterweight division, and I'll give you some matchups there as well. But starting with the most important one, Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal is basically set in stone. That fight needs to happen. There's no other fight to happen, to be honest with you. Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal. There's been this beef over a long time. They've had the altercations. They've been back and forth. They've had a face-to-face where they had to be separated, fake or not, and for the purpose of hype and promotion or not. There is beef here. They've been going back and forth for a very long time. Let these guys loose at each other. Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal needs its own fucking show to headline a pay-per-view. Usman versus Masvidal is the fight I want to see next. It just makes every level of sense in the world. Give Masvidal the shot. Why would you give him any other fight? I know Masvidal's right now is playing the game to get as much money as he wants. This is where you hit him with the harsh reality. Hey, Mr. BMF, we can take that belt with a snap of the fingers. You get what you're fucking given. That's what you have to do with fighters when they do this kind of thing. Jorge Masvidal is earning a lot of money that his record would not suggest that he should be earning. He's earning about $500,000 to show without a belt. That's crazy. He should understand the gift he's already been given and know that the belt is going to get him the real paychecks that he wants. There's no way they're going to give Masvidal more money than Usman to fight for Usman's world title. It doesn't work like that, Masvidal. I think they're going to hit Masvidal with some harsh realities. Maybe he's going to get a little bit of a boost of pay here or there. But Masvidal versus Usman needs to happen next. It's one of the biggest title fights in the sport right now. Make that fight next. But moving on to the rest of the division, now that we've got that one out the way. Everyone knows that fight's going to happen, but what they don't know is that Tyron Woodley should be rescheduled against Leon Edwards. A lot of people thought I was going to go with Tyron Woodley versus Covington. I think Leon Edwards deserves his shot against a top-ranked guy, and I also think that Woodley versus Covington is a big enough fight to happen after. It could happen with a full camp from each guy, but right now, with Covington coming off a loss to Usman, putting him in there against Woodley for another title shot, I don't know about that one. I feel like Covington's got a little bit more work to do and maybe should take on a different opponent, and we'll get to that in a second. But for right now, Leon Edwards is on a win streak. Tyron Woodley's looking to get back in there. Woodley might not get a title shot if he wins his next fight, so we'll see what happens with Tyron Woodley, even though he probably should do because he was a defending champion. Woodley versus Covington's going to happen, but the UFC has also said that they would like to reschedule a lot of their postponed fights that were originally signed. They're going to look to make those fights again over any other fight. So it's looking like Woodley versus Covington isn't going to happen yet. So let's do Woodley versus Leon Edwards in the meantime. It will be bigger now than it was before because it's only going to get bigger. There's more hype. It was the first event that got cancelled. That got a lot of eyes. People are now missing it. They didn't realise they would miss Woodley versus Leon Edwards. But now that it got cancelled, people are missing Woodley versus Edwards. There's a demand for it. Let's make it happen. It's the just thing to do for Leon Edwards. It's also the right thing to do for Tyron Woodley, because if he beats Leon Edwards, he's probably going to get a title shot. Who knows? Or maybe a shot against Covington. Speaking of the devil, Covington. What do you do with him? I'll tell you exactly what you do with him. You don't waste him on Michael Chiesa. Okay, you don't jack the spot from Leon Edwards and give Covington versus Tyron Woodley and try and string that together, because that needs some build-up. You know? I want to see Woodley versus Covington as the co-main event of a pay-per-view. As the main event of a pay-per-view with perhaps a belt on the line. Let's not waste this as a contenders fight. Let's be very smart here, because Woodley could beat Edwards and Colby could beat Nate Diaz. Covington versus Nate Diaz makes all the sense in the world. How is nobody talking about making this fight happen? It's the only fight to happen. Nate Diaz coming off a loss, looking to get back in there. If he beats Covington, not only will he get $500,000 to show and quite a nice amount of money, I'm sure, probably more than $500,000, he'll also earn his shot to jump straight back into the top 3 of the division. That's great for Nate Diaz. If he can jump straight back into the top 3, all of a sudden, him versus Masvidal rematch is not so far-fetched. Him fighting for the belt is also not so far-fetched. If McGregor decides to come up eventually, Nate Diaz is sitting there waiting for him in the top 3. It makes all the sense in the world to make Nate Diaz versus Colby Covington. The shit talk would be amazing. They could sell out an arena doing that. Have it as the co-main event of a pay-per-view. Don't do it as a fight night because we need to turn this into some pay-per-view revenue. Put it as the co-main event with a great main event in front of it. Maybe Stipe versus DC3 could be the main event with Colby Covington versus... It'd just be amazing. Nate Diaz Covington is the fight I want to see made. Am I that bad for saying that? Yes, Colby Covington would probably beat him. I do understand that. But I think, listen, Nate Diaz has got good submissions. You don't really want to take Nate Diaz to the ground. I know Colby Covington's better than him. But listen, Colby Covington's coming off a bit of a war where he got his jaw broken. What if Nate Diaz lands a crisp 1-2 and snaps that jaw in the first round now that it's already loosened? You never know. But I just feel like if we don't make this fight right now, we're never going to get Colby Covington versus a Diaz brother. And that's what I've always wanted to see. Colby Covington, Nate Diaz, Leon Edwards, Tyron Woodley, Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal. And let's see what happens after that. But that's what I want to have as the top 3 of my division. Those fights need to be made. They're the only fights to make. Who else is Nate Diaz going to fight right now? Robbie Lawler? It's good, but like... We need to make the most of Nate Diaz. Give him right up the rankings. Colby Covington, 2 big names. Covington's coming off a loss, so it also makes quite some sense. Nate Diaz is a huge name. Make that fucking fight, man. That's what I want to see. And Woodley versus Leon Edwards, and maybe we do the Woodley-Leon Edwards winner versus the Covington versus Diaz winner. And then those two fight for a title elimination bout. And fingers crossed, it's Woodley versus Covington, because that would build that fight even more. Can you imagine? That's what I want to see happen at the top of the division. But let's move on to the rest of the division. I'm going to start working my way downwards. My next fight I want to see is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Michael Chiesa. Both guys ranked very highly. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson at number 5. You've got Michael Chiesa at number 8. Not the highest ranked Michael Chiesa. I mean, he's kind of... The RDA win has kind of meant less and less as it's gone on. After so many people beat Rafael Dos Anjos, it doesn't have the same oomph anymore. But Michael Chiesa versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson would be an amazing fight. A co-main event of a fight night, very easily. Maybe even the main event of a fight night, who knows? Depends how loose the card is, you know what I mean? Like, we'll see. If it's a stacked card, we can maybe have it as the main event. But if that card needs a real main event, we'll slide that down to number 2. You know, but Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Michael Chiesa could be on the main card of a pay-per-view. I'd watch that shit. It's a great style matchup as well. You've got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, likes to be technical, moves backwards quite a bit. Michael Chiesa likes to swarm people, move forwards, grind him up against the cage. Who's had success against Wonderboy Thompson? Matt Brown was the first guy to write that blueprint to just stay stuck to him and not give him any space whatsoever. I think Michael Chiesa could pose some problems. I'm not saying that he would beat Wonderboy Thompson, especially with his broken nose and, you know, his striking ability. But we're not going to talk about that. We're not here to criticize Michael Chiesa's terrible stand-up. But Wonderboy versus Michael Chiesa would be an amazing fight. And the winner of that one could be looking at some of these top-ranked guys to try and get themselves a title shot. Neither of them are one fight away from a title shot. They need one more, then they need the title elimination bout, then we can talk about getting them a title shot. Do you understand? Or maybe if Masvidal gets the title and Colby loses to Nate and... Nah, they would make Nate versus Masvidal. What the fuck am I talking about? There's a real situation right now below number 4 in the division of welterweight where these guys are going to have to work very hard to get their title shot, including another fight that I need to see made. Gilbert Burns versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. The South American showdown. You've got the Brazilian in Gilbert Burns. You've got Santiago Ponzinibbio from Argentina. Make that fight happen. I know they're going back to Brazil. I think they're going back to Brazil with the headliner of Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa, with Figueiredo versus Benavidez 2 as the co-main event. I think that would be an amazing fight, an amazing card to have. Adesanya going to Brazil to take on Brazil's hottest prospect right now in Paulo Costa. Sign me up. And then on the main card, we can shimmy on Gilbert Burns versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. Give that the spotlight that it deserves. Will Santiago Ponzinibbio pick up where he left off on his massive win streak and take on a hungry newcomer in Gilbert Burns? I say newcomer. Gilbert Burns has been doing the damn thing for so fucking long. But only now has he really started to make his rise towards the title shot. Gilbert Burns, beat Damian Maia. Was it the best version of Damian Maia? We still have questions about Gilbert Burns. If he beats Santiago Ponzinibbio, then for sure, maybe, we do Gilbert Burns versus whoever I just said, whatever the fuck his name is. Gilbert Burns versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. Michael Chiesa versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Winners face each other. The winners of that next fight in the finals of these two fights that I've just said to you guys will then get looking towards a title shot. That sounds pretty fair to me. Maybe the loser of Masvidal versus Usman would be looking to get a call from one of these opponents. But those are the two fights I want to see outside the top 5. Gilbert Burns, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Michael Chiesa, moving on down the division. I'm going to start speeding this up a little bit because there's a lot more to cover. Also on that Brazil card that I was talking to you guys about, Adesanya versus Costa, Figueiredo versus Benavidez 2 for the interim title or the vacant flyweight world championship. Gilbert Burns versus Santiago Ponzinibbio on the main card. Also on the main card, Damian Maia versus Rafael dos Anjos. I don't want to see Damian Maia versus Diego Sanchez. I will not allow that fight to happen because I know what that fight is. Hey, I'm Damian Maia. I want a free win from my retirement. Give me Diego Sanchez because he's fighting like a retard recently. That's what Damian Maia is doing. I don't think that's how the sport should go. I want to see RDA, Brazilian legend, coming off a loss. I want to see Damian Maia, Brazilian legend, coming off a loss. Both of them looking towards retirement. I don't want to see some young prospect getting a fucking advantage over these old guys that aren't really with it anymore. Let's pair them up together. Damian Maia, Rafael dos Anjos. Retirement bouts for both of them maybe. Or if RDA wins, he'll probably look to stick around. Who knows? Maia versus dos Anjos. Sounds good to me. I think dos Anjos might have a bit of a chance there as well. Because Damian Maia is getting older and older. And after that last KO loss to Gilbert Burns, anything can happen. RDA versus Damian Maia is what I want to see. Now, let's get into the juicy contendership area. Robbie Lawler is a veteran coming off some losses, still looking to have a fight. He teased a little bit from retirement and about retirement, but I think he's got one more in him. James Krause is the fight I want to see for Robbie Lawler. I think James Krause should be rewarded for what he did at UFC 247, stepping in upper weight class against Trevin Giles, getting robbed by the judges who had alternate interests that were friends with Trevin Giles in real life. The jiu-jitsu coach of Trevin Giles was a fucking judge at an event in the UFC. That's crazy, and they gave Giles the first round when Krause had his back for 4 minutes. Madness. Give Krause a reward for taking the risk that he did to his own health. A day's notice, upper weight class against Trevin Giles. He basically won, and even if you don't think he won, look at his welterweight resume. 6 fights in a row. 6-fight win streak. Krause versus Robbie Lawler is a fight I want to see, and also very winnable for Robbie Lawler. Krause isn't going to go out there and KO Lawler. He's not going to go out there and completely ragdoll Robbie Lawler. That's going to be a hell of a fight. Krause takes a lot of punishment, don't get me wrong. And if Trevin Giles can have you in some kind of danger here and there, Robbie Lawler's got a chance as well. Lawler versus Krause is the fight I want to see. Moving on. A fight got announced for UFC 249. Vicente Luque versus Nico Price. Amazing fight. Originally, Vicente Luque was supposed to be fighting Randy Brown, and Nico Price was supposed to be fighting Muslim Salikov. I didn't want to see either of those fights, but Luque versus Price is just... I could come to it. It's such a good matchup. Like, that is guaranteed chaos. Guaranteed chaos. Co-main event of any fight night. Maybe a push just on the main card in the feature fight. Main card of any pay-per-view. At least the headliner of a prelims of a pay-per-view. Vicente Luque versus Nico Price is guaranteed fun and action. Let's make that fight happen, because now that it's been made and I've become aware of it, much like you guys, I did not know that fight was even... I never paired those two names up together. Never in my life did I pair those two names up together. I didn't even think about Luque versus Price. But since it got announced for 249, I can't stop thinking about it. Luque versus Price would be chaos. Let's make it happen. Moving on. Oh yeah, Jeff Neal. Fuck! Never mind. We'll get to Jeff Neal now then. Jeff Neal versus Neil Magny. I didn't make that matchup just because they're both called Neil. Did it play a huge factor in me matching those two guys together? Yes, it did. Both of their names being Neil, or having Neil in their names, first or second name, did play a huge factor as to why I paired these two men up. Jeff Neal versus Neil Magny. Sounds good to me. Neil Magny bounced back. He was ranked before, so I don't know how he isn't ranked now. I don't know how Pettis is still ranked. If he's staying at lightweight and he wants to have another fight at lightweight, and he's not expressed any interest in going back up to welterweight, then why is he ranked there? And if McGregor's ranked at welterweight, and I'm going to come at McGregor here as well, he's only going to be at lightweight from now on. He wants Gaethje, then he wants the winner of Khabib versus Ferguson. That sounds like his next year is completely booked up with being at 155 pounds. Remove him from the rankings. He didn't even fight a ranked welterweight to begin with. But either way, I understand. But take those guys out the rankings. Bump up Neil Magny and some of these other guys that deserve to be there. Neil Magny versus Jeff Neal. Sounds amazing to me. I'm not proven with how good Jeff Neal is, and I don't think he should be ranked number 12 or number 11, whatever he is in the division. I don't think that should be there at all. He beat Mike Perry, who wasn't ranked, and then he beat, Frank Camacho, who's now an unranked lightweight about to be cut from the UFC. You know? I don't really agree with that. So let's see him beat a ranked guy. And Neil Magny, even though he's not currently ranked, is perceived as a ranked opponent and a high-level guy who had a great performance against Li Jingliang. Fair enough. Li Jingliang looked the worst I've ever seen him in my life. But Jeff Neal, Neil Magny, Battle of the Neels. Let's see it happen. Co-main event of a fight night. Main card of a pay-per-view. Sign me up. Amazing fights all round. Next up. I'm going to get through these a little bit quicker now because I don't want to keep you for too long. But these are my fun matchups outside of the rankings. Matt Brown versus Nicholas Dalby. Matt Brown on a streak, looking for a good name that's going to earn him a ranked opponent. I'm guessing Matt Brown's going for a title again because he's on a 2-fight win streak right now. Maybe even 3, I don't quite remember. But Matt Brown's doing the damn thing. If he wants to extend his win streak and get a win over a big current name in Nicholas Dalby and get himself towards a ranking spot, go ahead. Matt Brown versus Nicholas Dalby sounds good to me. And Nicholas Dalby earned himself a big name as well with a big win in his return against Alex Cowboy Oliveira. Sign me up. Matt Brown, Nicholas Dalby. Sounds good to me. Moving on. Jake Matthews versus Claudio Silva. Both guys criminally underrated in the UFC so far. They are lacking the big win that they need to get themselves some hype and attention. They can't seem to get a great matchup with a guy who's also on a win streak. So let's put the 2 win streak guys up against each other. Give them the fight that each of them wants. Jake Matthews versus Claudio Silva. Sign me the fuck up. Moving on. Mike Perry versus Deron Winn. Yes, I mentioned Mike Perry. That's a great fight. Deron Winn is too morbidly obese to fight at middleweight, and I don't want to see it happen anymore. I want to see him come back down to welterweight. He was never there in the first place, so I want to see him make his debut in the welterweight division where he fucking belongs. Lay off the pies, Deron Winn, and maybe you'll start living up to your second name a little bit more because it's been a little bit of a rough go for you in the UFC so far. Loser goes home. Mike Perry, Deron Winn, they'll probably talk shit back and forth. On the prelims of a great pay-per-view card, on the main card of a great fight night, Mike Perry versus Deron Winn sounds good to me for Deron Winn's welterweight UFC debut, and Mike Perry gets a chance against a big name to make a statement and a winnable fight as well. Moving on. Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikov. The 2 guys left out of the Luque versus Price chaotic fight. Let's put the scraps together. You know, I don't really have much else to say about that, but these are the 2 unwanted children of the welterweight division and the UFC. So let's put Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikov together, make that fight happen. Next up, Lyman Good versus Diego Lima. Diego Lima on a 3-fight win streak. They've been close fights, but a 3-fight win streak nevertheless. Lyman Good, big win over his last opponent that I can't quite remember the fucking name of. He was Asian. I'm sure he was Asian. Was he Asian? He was something. I don't know where he was. Let me look up Lyman Good's record recently because I know he lost to Maya, but I don't know who he bounced back against. Was it a good name? Let me find out real quick. Chance Recounter. He beat him by TKO, of course, and Chance Recounter beat Ismail Nurdiev before this fight. So that's a good win for Lyman Good to get real quick. So I'd like to see Lyman Good versus Diego Lima. Great matchup. 2 great fighters. Still need to string together maybe 1 or 2 more wins before we're talking about them getting a ranking shot. Let's make that fight. See who can continue their streak. Lyman Good, Diego Lima, both injured right now. Both looking to come back later this year. Let's make that fucking fight happen. Emil Meek versus James Vick. Loser goes home. I love both these guys. I don't want to see him cut from the UFC because there's a soft spot in my heart for them. They both lose so much, but everyone knows them. That tells me they have to be a superstar. So let's just not just chuck these guys over to Bellator, because although James Vick gets KO'd a lot, he does it really well. Like, that's something you have to give James Vick credit for. No one does that. James Vick gets KO'd and everyone's like, he's trash. Hang on a second. James Vick getting KO'd has given us some of the best knockouts of the fucking year. He has a part to play in that. The same way that Ben Askren is somewhat responsible for Masvidal's success. I say give him another chance. I don't care about the loss streak. James Vick, Emil Meek, loser goes home, winner stays on, and maybe takes on the winner of Mike Perry versus Deron Winn. Sounds good to me. Moving on to Danny Roberts versus Kenan Song. No. Rustam. Oh, I've already said it, so let's just say this one. Danny Roberts versus Kenan Song. Both coming off wins. Make the fucking fight. Rustam Khabilov versus Daniel Rodriguez. Khabilov, mainstay of the UFC, coming off with some wins right now. Still needs to put together a bit more of a streak. Daniel Rodriguez, on the other hand, just beat Tim Means in an upset. Still needs to establish himself a bit more of a resume in the UFC. Rustam Khabilov versus Daniel Rodriguez makes a lot of sense to me. Both coming off wins. Moving on. Mickey Gall versus David Zawada. David Zawada coming off a big submission win over Abubakar Nurmagomedov, a member of the Nurmagomedov family. Not just any Nurmagomedov, because I know that you don't have to have... They have the same name, whatever. They have the same name over there, so it gets a bit confusing. But he's actually a relative of Khabib. I know everyone from Dagestan is considered a relative of Khabib, but they're actually from different parents, if you could believe it. The way that they have the exact same hairline, every single one of them. But you know, they're from different parents. I get it. So yeah, David Zawada versus Mickey Gall. David Zawada showed he had a great submission game against Abubakar Nurmagomedov. Mickey Gall needs to fight someone with a great submission game, in my opinion, so that we could see if Mickey Gall's really the real fucking deal, you know? Mickey Gall goes out there, takes guys down, looks to get on top and establish control. Let's see him do it against a guy who submitted a member of the Nurmagomedov family. They're both low in the rankings, very low in the rankings, by the way. Both coming off a win, and Mickey Gall's coming off a win over Salim Touhari on short notice at UFC Washington, D.C. Covington versus Lawler on ESPN 6, I believe. Maybe ESPN 5, one of those cards. That'll be a big fight to make. See who can string together 2 wins in a row. And the last one on the list, Chaos Williams versus Miguel Beza. 2 newcomers in the UFC. 2 guys with 1 fight wins. Let's put them up together. There can only be one prospect to come through. Chaos Williams or Miguel Beza. Who's it going to be? That's a fun fight to happen as well on the prelims of a pay-per-view. Sign me up. Good fights. See you later. Thank you for watching. Hope you agree. I'll put my list down below the video in the comments. Tell me what division you want to do next. I'm thinking middleweight, but you tell me. You let me know. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. Click that button there. I'll see you later.